everybody. My name is Sylvain Rochon, and I am the Paradise Engineer in my home office, as I have been for many, many days. And there is the COVID-19 situation going on, and that's why I'm doing my part and self-isolating. I'm not sure. I'm not sick. I was not exposed overly so. I've gone to the grocery store and things like that, as usual. But I'm totally unafraid. Because if you know me, I understand the situation quite well, and that's why I am unafraid. I do have concerns, just like all the professionals out there, the healthcare industry, because this virus has particular characteristics that make it very, very nasty in our society as a new pathogen in circulation. And what I've been doing while in isolation, I've been educating people. I've been debunking lots of theories and misinformation from lots of friends and businesses and family members and whatnot. So I wanted to make a video that would make things very simple and clear to you. Because now I have a lot more data on the virus itself, because there's been some research and a lot of information going about from really good sources that give us a lot of hope. And just like most of my videos, it's all about engineering a paradise. Like, what are we building that is better for the future? And it turns out, after thinking about it, that this virus crisis may be a much bigger opportunity for us as a society to create this paradise future sooner than later. And I'll get to that in a minute, because it's all about how society, how the brain works, and how we respond to crises, and the human neurobiology. And I'll try to simplify things. I don't want to make things complicated. But first, let's talk about the virus and just talk about the real stuff about the virus. Okay, the reason why healthcare professionals and experts are concerned, and I am too, about this virus, is not so much about how many people will be sick or dead or die. Although this is obviously the center of the question, but in a way it's not. It is at the center, but it's really about something else as well. It's kind of combined. Let's say it's combined. To put it simply, is the issue is that it's a new virus that will contaminate a lot of people, like huge amounts of people, and a small percentage of that large number will end up in hospitals in a very short amount of time, and that will blow up the capacity of hospitals to handle them, right? And so yeah, you have a lot of people that become sick or that may die of this virus, but it also causes further problems because other people that normally use the hospitals for heart attacks, high blood pressure, other issues that may cause death can't be served because the healthcare system just can't handle it. I mean, they can't increase capacity within a couple of weeks on all healthcare systems all over the world simultaneously. There's just not enough manpower, not enough equipment, just not enough on anything. And then you end up doing triage at the hospitals, and like, okay, you probably won't die, won't survive treatment, so we won't give you treatment, just like in military times, like in war times. But we're going to give treatment to those that have a chance of survival because there's limited equipment and staff and medicine to go around. That's the scary situation. That's the concerning situation. And that's why we're in lockdown in a lot of countries, because we want to limit the spread of this virus and the cases that go to the hospitals. What the medium they call flattening the curve, and I'm putting up a graph of it just because you've probably seen this before. The first curve is if you don't do anything and just let it go, it's going to essentially, because of its R naught, like it's a multiplication contagious number for this virus, which is between 2 and 3. It's probably around 2.3 or something theoretically. That's the base of an exponential, right? So 2.3 exponent number, right? If you do the math, you pick up your calculator and you put 2.3, or if you can't can't use a scientific calculator, just use 2, right? And put an exponent and put 12 in, 2.3 exponent 12. Well, that's the like the 12 would be the number of times, the number of cycles that in a community that another set of people were infected. Because the R naught is how many people will be infected per individual that is already infected. So if I'm infected, I'm patient 0, if you will. I will infect 2.3 people, so between 2 and 3 individuals. So that makes, let's say, 3 or 4 individuals that have the virus, right? Now this new generation, which is like 2 or 3 new people, they infect 2 or 3 new people each. Well, that ends up being somewhere between 4 and 9 individuals, and they infect a new generation, so on and so on. So to do the math of that, to get that exponential curve that starts going up, you put in your calculator 2.3 exponent, and the number would be the number of generations of that happens. Now, in the according to the American numbers, the number of days between cycles is around 3. So it takes about 3 days for this duplication or this cycle to go through. And this has started, late January. So that's a lot of cycles. So if you just give you an example, if you put in your calculator, I'm going to do it right now. Okay, just it's on my smartphone. I'm using the scientific calculator just to get the right number. 2.3 exponent 12, which 2.3 I can't exponent 12. So 12 cycles, 3 days per cycle. Well, that's 36 days, so a little bit over a month, right? Well, that's from one patient, you end up with 22,000 people that have been infected over a month. Okay? Now, if you keep doing that, if you do 2.3 and you do it over 2 months, which, it's 20 ish. All right, so a little bit over 2 months. So let's use 20 cycles. Then you end up with 17 million people. All right, so that's the exponential curve of number of people that are infected if there's nothing happening, if you don't do any intervention. The interventions like social distancing, closing down a business so that people don't congregate, and close down restaurants to avoid proximity and gatherings. What that does, that decreases that base number, that R naught. And if an R naught, again, you can pick up your calculator and you do the math. If it's 1, if one person only infects another person on average because of social distancing and whatnot, then the people that have the virus only infect another person, so you don't increase the number of infections every day. You just kind of keep it stable. And if you can get that number below 1, well, then it gets less and less. And that's how you flatten the curve, right? So you decrease the chances of the viruses to infect others. Now, so that's what we're doing. And the graph shows that what I told you, and I'm going to put it up again, is that if you flatten the curve, what happens is that you're spreading the amount of patients that end up in hospitals over a longer period of time, so that it's below hospital capacity. So that means everybody that has the virus will be treated properly, and everybody that has any other case that we usually would have will also be treatable. And then you have the best case scenario. Like in the meantime, we're looking at drugs, and we're looking at vaccines. That some drugs that are already in market may be useful. Like you may have heard of the chloroquine or a hydroxychloroquine combined with some antibiotic like azithromycin or another. That's shown good preliminary results to be effective against this virus. Remains to be seen if it really will not cause side effects or other problems with this particular virus and immune system response and so on. But I think we'll be okay with that. It's going to be a good tool to, when you get to the hospital, because these are not over-the-counter drugs, okay? then you have a much higher chance of getting the virus out of your system. So shorter stay at hospitals means capacity decrease in need, and also fewer severe cases and fewer deaths and so on. So that's something that we'll have drugs like that available in hospitals and useful and validated within the next few weeks, I think. And so that's going to solve a problem, which is the hospital problem of too many people dying from this, right? Because ultimately, this virus is going to be with us forever. Coronaviruses is a family of viruses, so we know the family itself quite well. They tend to, you can do vaccines for them, for sure. And this one doesn't seem like it mutates a lot. That's good. However, coronaviruses in general, when there's a vaccine for them, the vaccines are only just effective for a year. If it doesn't mutate like we suspect too much, then the vaccine may be valid for a couple of years. There's always going to be strains that a vaccine won't work for one strain, one for another, but it's going to be in circulation, just like the flu and any other virus that we know of. Because vaccines, unlike polio and these other vaccines that we have when we're young, it's not good for a lifetime. It actually not, it doesn't work that way inside the body for these specific viruses. So you would probably have to take viruses every time or every year. Now, the beauty of vaccines is that you're creating antibodies in the bloodstream, and then the virus comes in, the immune system attacks the virus right away because the antibodies attach themselves to the viruses, deactivates them, or has the immune system eat them up directly before they get to infect too many cells. And that's what happens with, that's why we take vaccines, right? Is to avoid catching these diseases. They're being dismantled by our immune system before they get to do any harm. Now, there's another topic around that. Like right now, we don't have a vaccine, and we won't have one until at least 12 months. So it's going to be 2021 before we have a vaccine for the COVID-19. So there's no vaccine. But there is something similar to that that's happening. This virus is so contagious, and so many people are asymptomatic. Young people are generally not seriously affected by it. So they're basically carriers, what we call vectors. They carry the virus and they spread it around to other people that will be more vulnerable. Like the older you are, the more chances you'll develop serious conditions. And if you have respiratory conditions, or if you're even a smoker, for example, which does cause distress in your respiratory system, you're much more likely to develop serious conditions or pneumonia or something from this virus. Okay, and that's how you end up in hospital bed or dying and needing a respirator, things like that. So as people get sick or let's say get infected, because you may have no symptoms, that doesn't feel sick, does it? You can still infect others, but your body does react to the virus and tries to eliminate it. Your immune system does create antibodies, just like a vaccine would, because that's why vaccines work. You create antibodies because of the infection itself directly. Now, these antibodies are in your system for a while, like I said, a year, maybe two. So when the virus, you're exposed to the virus again, your body just rejects it because, again, this virus doesn't seem to mutate a lot. So that's what we call social immunity. If you have at least 60% of the population that have these antibodies inside them, the society gets the infection because it'll come around. A lot of people can't be infected, even if you're in contact with somebody that does not have the antibody and gets sick. So it doesn't create this big pandemonium anymore. So that's why you've heard some politicians, and they seem very callous, and sometimes they are actually callous. Sometimes they're just not using good words to explain themselves. Some of them do understand if a lot of people have this virus, at least 60%, then problem's not solved, but at least the hospital capacity problem may solve itself. So we're kind of hoping a lot of people get infected because we want to reach that level where we get this natural social immunity to it, so that it doesn't break the whole thing and cause a lot of problems in the economy. So that, I mean, I'm explaining a lot of things, and it may be enough for a lot of you guys, but it's really important to understand that what we're doing now and that's hurting the economy by social distancing not working and things like that, is because we don't have that social immunity yet. And a study that just came out of Iceland shows that they had like about 1% of their population had antibodies in their, whether they were sick or not. And they just did a random blanket test. So we're nowhere near that huge amounts of people having the virus and antibodies for it. So we don't have that. We don't have a vaccine. So we're dealing with exponential curves and huge problems potentially with the hospitals. And in Italy, in New York City, and other places, huge issues in Spain now. And that this will get worse. In most countries, except for South Korea and China, although I don't trust their numbers, they were able to flatten the curve, and the number of new infections every day is equal or less than the day before. So their hospital systems are able to handle the capacity. So because this virus is going to be with us, we'll have to increase the amount of capacity of our hospitals, and we'll want to add that virus to a list of usual viruses that we'll catch on a fairly regular basis. We catch colds, we catch the flu on occasion, we'll catch COVID-19 on occasion. Okay, that's just going to be the reality of our new life and new reality. Now, that's the situation and the reason why I'm concerned about the health system, but I'm not scared for myself in general sense. Like viruses we have to live with them. They've always been around. This is just a new one. And again, more people will die because this is an additional virus in the human population that was not there before. And that death is always, a bad thing. But it's also life. We shouldn't be angry at the virus or the people that are transmitting it. It's nobody's fault, right? We're going to deal with the problem, make sure that we minimize the amount of sick and death. Now, where this becomes an opportunity, I'm not talking about opportunity for pharmaceuticals, because definitely they're going to make a lot of money creating new drugs and producing new things. And I mean, the healthcare system providers and suppliers, once they get workers, they're able to produce, let's say, now fine. But the phenomenon that we're seeing because of all this isolation, the shutdown, is accelerating our path towards a potential paradise. And I'll explain why. Right now, a lot of the world is not working. So companies they still need to produce, and we still need to eat. They still want to remain alive and functional and productive, but they have trouble with workers. So what do clever companies do? Well, they'll automate more, because automated systems can't get sick. And there is a cost to that, but it's more costly not to install installation or more automated services now, because you don't have workers and you need to produce. So you either do nothing or you keep producing. So they'll keep producing. There's a lot of layoffs happening, or people are just getting sent home. So if this lasts a number of weeks, and it will, 2-3 months, depends on where things flatten and capacity of the hospitals, basically, and political decisions and whatnot. Well, you're going to have a significant amount of companies that will automate things because they need to. And we need their products just to keep, even though we're at home, we still order and we still live and spend money, right? So that's one aspect of things. The second aspect of things, because there's all these layoffs, the governments in the U.S., Canada, and a lot of places, they're doing packages, like cash packages, so that people can still pay their bills. Of course, there's some relief for mortgages and banks, giving leeways on student loans and loans in general, so that you don't have to make the payments right away. And so, like, that's just kind of a temporary relief. But these monies are very similar to a concept of basic income that are meant to be temporary. In Canada, the rollout is for it's like an extension of employment insurance. You can't work, even if you're self-employed. you can get that amount, a certain amount of money. It's like twice a month, I think. And it's rolled out just to avoid creating a new system. It's rolled out with what we call in Canada the tax credit system. So that's a like a payment system that already works. That gives out a certain amount of a credit or cash back for taxes paid from the sales tax, not income taxes. I think it's every quarter or every month. I'm not sure. And it's for people that have a certain income or below, right? So now a lot of people don't have an income because they don't have a job anymore, at least temporarily. Well, they're just going to use that system because it's connected to every citizen anyway, and they're divvying out some money in that way. So it's kind of a system to just easily give out basic income, temporary, while the crisis is going on. In the States, they implemented something similar, but it's not using an automated system. They're just sending checks, I think, by mail, and it's a one-time check right now. But they're going to, depending on how long the U.S. expects things to happen, they may extend that. We'll see what they do. But essentially, it's kind of the same discussion there. In Canada, it's a bit more social system, and we're used to a free healthcare. Well, a free. Nothing's free, but a universal healthcare system that individuals don't pay extra money for per visit and things like that. In the U.S., it's doing the same. So in Canada, this like getting money twice a month is kind of, nobody's really arguing it. It just makes sense. We want people to have money in their hands so that they can spend, and then the companies can keep, well, making products, right? Using their new automated systems, because a lot of people can't work or don't want to. Right, so you're creating this system. In the States, we'll see kind of the same thing. They're giving money in people's hands so that they can spend their dues and pay groceries and products. And companies are also automated because I think last week 3.3 million people filed for unemployment insurance in the States, like a huge amount. In Canada was like 1 million, which is huge because Canada's population is much smaller. But different systems, so there's reasons why the numbers pan out this way. So we're creating a system that is similar to what I've been describing life under basic income in my articles. Not because AI is so great, which is what I describe in my articles, like, because that's I describe it as the moving force that kind of forces us to change how we do things. And now it's kind of forcing us to, in that sense, it's forcing us to use basic income to keep an economy going. So we're kind of flipping things around because AI is so great and the employees are just in the way of productivity. That's how I describe it in that scenario. But now the scenario is like there's a crisis, and it's the people that can't work and contribute. They can't because we need to keep the healthcare system up and about. And so we can't work with other people. We have to work remotely. So it's kind of, and then the basic income is the solution to keep these people and to keep the economy kind of going on life support a bit. So, so it's kind of like a window on what basic income could be with automation. But now what we're doing is we're creating a lot more automation. So when people come out of this in 2-3 months, let's say, and start working again, it took that amount of time for China, and they started the crisis in November, December last year, and it became exponential in January. Well, we started seeing cases only in January, and so it's going to be 2-3 months. See, it's like April, May. People are going to start getting used to having this check. They say, well, they're still willing to work. They want to. And then companies will start reopening, but they won't hire probably all the people back because they automated certain things. So they don't need all that staff anymore. They need fewer amount of staff. So you're going to have some people that will be out of luck. They're going to see their extra check or their basic income temporary check go away, and they won't be able to be employed again. And what we know as psychology is once something is in place that is beneficial to you, a human being doesn't want it to be taken away again afterwards. And it's the same for companies, same for governments. Once you set something up that is beneficial, You don't want it to take it away. You want to keep it. That's why we have income taxes these right now. It was an idea from the 1860s after or during the Civil War in the States. And it came into law in 1916 during the First World War, and for both reasons was about the government needed to raise funds to pay for the war because it's a government responsibility to spend money, and it had to go to get some somewhere. But after the First World War, income taxes remained a thing, and it remained throughout this time. And then the income taxes, they played with the numbers sometimes based on wartime, but they kept it because they liked it, and people didn't object to it because they knew the benefit. They could see the benefits that it came from the government. So in this situation with basic income and automation, like this kind of dynamic, when we get close to the end of it, I think people are going to get a taste of the temporary basic income. It's like, well, I still want to work, but I get this safety net I didn't have before. Well, let's keep that. That's a great idea. And governments will see it as a safety to another crisis that may come along, right? Because you can claw back that money if people make enough money, right? So you're giving away, let's say, $2,000 a month in basic income because of the crisis, right? I think that's the approximate. I didn't really check the exact amounts because it's still fresh. I'm not sure if it's confirmed or not, but it's about $2,000, like in two installments per month per adult, right? But anyway, let's just call it $2,000 a month. You're receiving that, and you can't work because of automation, because of virus, because of war, because of reasons. Okay. Well, you get that money, but then you get to you're still spending it. So companies are still spinning out products because you need them. You constantly need to consume, right? But if you are working at a company, the companies can set up under the income tax system, which started off in crisis 100 years ago, realistically. And let's say you make, I don't know, $50,000 a year, right? Well, you give that money back as part of your income tax calculation, let's say, okay? Or maybe it needs to be higher than that, like 75, whatever, right? If you make way more, well, then maybe you get a little bit taxed a bit more because you're making comfortably a lot more money, like 200,000, let's say. Now you're paying the basic income for perhaps 2 or 3 people. If you don't make a lot, like $20,000 a year or zero, well, then you're either not giving it back, you receive it, or you're giving some of it back because you do make 20,000. So maybe you give $500 a month back, you still have 1,500 in your pocket. So it's not, it doesn't need to be an out-of-pocket expense from the government. You can bake that into the income tax calculations, and then you have a constant number of individuals that have money in pocket to participate in the economy, to consume. People that consume are happy, they're healthy, they don't participate as much in criminal activity, they're healthier, so that's less of a burden in the healthcare system. We've seen these results in a whole lot of basic income pilots since the 70s, and even before that. We know this works, but now we're going to be living it to a certain extent, it's a limited extent, for a limited amount of time throughout a couple of nations and in Europe and everywhere. And I think people are going to get a taste of it. And it's easy to manage to keep it. And I think it's going to be beneficial, given the numbers. It's going to be beneficial for governments to make it work and to keep it. In part because companies will be automating during the crisis. And gradually, like I described in my articles, automation, when it takes hold and it gets better and better and there's more and more investment in it, it's going to displace more and more people because it's more productive and people can't be automation systems can't be disrupted as much as whole populations of people, because we are concerned about our health. A computer breaks down or a robot breaks down, we just replace it. We don't really care if there's like a viral outbreak in the hacker world inside a company, for example. Now these are all going to be replaceable. Insurance companies kick in. it's fine, right? So, so this whole crisis may accelerate our society towards a shift where people don't need to absolutely work for a living anymore, and that's the point. Because this is a problem. We are not built to be workers, to use up our bodies constantly, hour after hour, to be part of the productivity. Like we've done it for a long time because nothing else could do it, and we need product to consume, so we did it, assisted by tools and robots and all these things for a long while. Now we've shifted the robots, and the AI has become so good and so prevalent that we are supporting the AI and the robots in the productivity. And now we're because of this crisis, we're noticing, okay, like these supportive systems, which is the people, now they can get sick and they get taken out. Then you can't produce anymore because we're supporting too much. Well, let's automate more so that the people are not needed, and the company can still survive things. But people still need to eat, so we need to change how the economy works and how the cash flow works. So we'll be in that test systems. Politically, basic income itself has been discussed quite a lot in the last couple of years in both these countries, the US and Canada. More seriously in Canada because, again, more social systems. We're used to socialism, we're used to universal healthcare and stuff like that. But also in the States, Bernie Sanders, to a certain degree, with his guaranteed jobs, which I don't like, but it's similar. It's a step forward. Andrew Yang, which dropped out, but that was his whole campaign, and others kind of talking about it. So I think we're going to get used to it. I think companies will automate more, and they'll want more automation and more ways to do it, and that's going to accelerate that whole process and that understanding that basic income and a new economy that is human-centered, to make sure humans participate and are able to consume and are able to buy constantly, no matter what. That's going to remain, I'm pretty sure. Just because it's psychologically something you don't want to take away once you have it in the system. And I believe some politicians are concerned about that because they are against the concept, but they kind of have to do something because people are pressuring them because they can't eat. And they don't have any income. So I think they'll be forced into seeing the results and seeing the reactions of the population. And if the population are for it, and they like it, and you see the tangible results of what would happen if they didn't in this crisis, it's really hard to take it away afterwards. And it's possibly it won't. And that would be good. If you want to talk about other opportunities at this time, well, there's all sorts of innovation happening using AI in automation, in pharmaceutical drug discovery, new techniques to fight viruses more efficiently, and so on. So that in the next few years, knowing what I describe about the virus that's going to be with us for a while and actually causing quite a lot of havoc on top of the usual viruses we have, there's a lot of motivation right now and a lot of demand from people in government to get solutions. And so innovators are filling that demand, just like the free market should. And so we'll be able to lick a lot of viral problems, not only this one, but probably others within the next few years, to help us fix a lot of the healthcare issues related to that. There may be other reforms associated with healthcare, like quite possible in the States. The universal healthcare idea is becoming quite more appealing politically. So Biden seemed to be winning the primaries. Maybe Sanders going to get some advantages in the remaining states because that's part of his platform to bring universal healthcare in the states, and that may tip some of the balance out to him. I'm not rooting for one or the other. Actually, I prefer Sanders because he's progressive, at least, even though I don't agree with lots of his programs specifically. He's trying to change things for a better, I think, towards the paradise I'm talking about. So, all in all, there will be some more hurt and some more suffering. because of this, but just be aware that the strategy is to flatten the curve. It's not because it's the plague, right? We want to limit the amount of pain and suffering that can be caused by this virus, but it's, again, it's not Ebola. Like it won't decimate populations like 20% of the population. At most, 1% of those infected. So maybe 0.5% of a total population. Still bad, I know, but I'm talking about it's not decimation. You know what I mean? It's manageable. We can deal with that amount. Again, I'm not rooting for it. I'm just saying this, you know, it's better than 20%, right? And we'll get through this. And in this whole process, we may save more lives by having basic income, by having better healthcare, by having less poor people dealing with a problem of poverty that causes death and suffering by the means of poverty, and also causes a lot of economic unrest, and is extremely costly. Poverty is extremely costly to the rest of society, more so than any basic income, because you can, like I explained it, you can manage the amount that's being given out and the amount that's being pulled in. It's not extra money spent. It doesn't have to be that way. You should do the math and it's fine. You just reshuffle how the budget works. So I think we'll be off in a better state next year and the year afterwards than we would have been without the virus this year. That's a weird thing to say, but if you take into account all the variables, ultimately this virus scare will help us be better and lose less lives and have better systems and have better lives sooner. And that's all thanks to innovators, the free market, and our own desires as human beings to avoid suffering and make things better. And we're moved mostly out of the status quo by crises. And that's just history. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed the video and hope it was informative, and that you are encouraged to write this out responsibly and help me build a paradise out of the ashes like a phoenix. All right.